Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, a show where the action is the juice and where we live our lives a quarter mile at a time. I'm your host, Cisco from Misfit Minded. You can follow me on all the socials at misfit_minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
And I'm your other host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Each week we take the red pill and use our certain set of skills to break down the best action films of all time for the final show of 2024, talking about the 2009 film Inglorious Bastards.
We in the killing Nazi business. And cousin, businesses are booming. Their name.
The Germans call them the Bastards.
Their target.
Killing Hitler.
But a mission like this
Punch those goons out and burst in there blasting.
never goes according to plan. Yeah, just think of that. From director Quentin Tarantino. Brad Pitt.
Oh, yes.
Inglorious Bastards. Rated R.
I love how that was like low quality too, to like add to the exploitation
Of it all.
version of it all. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, it's about the coinciding plans of a group of Jewish U.S. soldiers and a theater owner to assassinate Nazi leaders in Nazi-occupied France during World War II. Get this bullet train started. Let's take the listeners back to August 21st, 2009. It's made for $70 million, grossed a total of $120 million in the U.S. and Canada and $321 million nationwide or worldwide. Excuse me. It's QT. He's a known product. He's one of the few directors. Anything he makes, I will be in the theater. It doesn't matter how terrible it looks.
Same.
It's just I'm going to go see it. I know his writing. I know his directing enough to trust it. So. It opened at number 1 alongside District 9 at number 2, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince at number 8, and yeah, that brings us to our first segment called Getting the Band Back Together.
I don't have friends. I got family.
In this segment, we'll take a slow-mo look at the filmmaking choices that went into the film and the ass kickers responsible. This movie, as you mentioned, was written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. What stands out to you? This is a masterpiece in my opinion. So talk me through, how you feel about it.
Well, yeah, we already did our Pulp Fiction episode, and in that one, I was like, some people might be mad over my rating, but I just feel like he has better films in his arsenal. He would grow as a filmmaker. This is kind of one of the ones I was talking about, where I think that's like so evidently clear. Like, I just, just to first and foremost, we always talk about like how when you watch a QT film, it's like, oh, there's gonna be some cringe language. Here we go, like, and
Right.
some cringe dialogue. Like, even though like it's masterfully written, and has a musicality to it. This one doesn't really have anything that like made me. I mean, obviously there's Nazis in it, but like
Right.
it's like they're not spouting out the N word, every
Right. Yeah,
every
there's like
scene.
soft racism when it comes to her projectionist, but it's nothing compared to,
Yeah.
some of the harsh stuff that we've heard in other stories.
So automatically bonus points for that.
Yep.
It's got like it's his first in what I would call, and like many critics have already um written about this, but like his alternative history.
Yeah, revisionist history.
Yeah.
Right.
This was the first one. So I also think like maybe people forget about that, or like it doesn't get talked about enough that this was the first one, because none of his other movies have this kind of like, they're all maybe paying tribute to another time, like Pulp Fiction, that makes them feel timeless. But no one knew that by the end of this movie that Hitler was going to get a full clip to the face. Like,
Right.
I remember seeing that and being like, holy shit, like he actually did it.
Yes.
And again, that's like only something Quentin Tarantino would think about. I remember like even at the time, like when this was getting like Oscar love, him talking about like, this is the movie I was like born to make. Like, all the other movies you could like say it has some Tarantino over the top violence, which I mean, this does have that too.
Yep.
But it feels like that serves the story here more than maybe any
Appropriately.
of the other ones, because you're dealing
Totally.
with Nazis who are putting people in camps and basically torturing them and treating them like, non-human.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
how are we going to respond? Aldo Ring tells you right at the top, we are not going to reform them. There's only one way to do it. I want my Nazi scalps.
That's right. That's right.
So I think those are just like my initial thoughts. What about you?
Same, same. I feel like, I am obsessed with the fact that this is a World War II Western, right? Like he's putting his love of Westerns and he's using the Western motif as a way to tell this story, which I love so much. All of my favorite things about, that he loves to use are here. The music is amazing. The opening credits, are standard. The fur elise over the farm scene and the score that rises when Shoshana's family is murdered, the cat people needle drop when the plan's coming together. It's just so fun. And I guess I forgot that this movie had a Once Upon a Time chapter 1 title card, right? Because I was thinking, oh yeah, that's what he uses in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but it's sort of like maybe that's how he's helping you understand that it's this, it could have went this way story, right? Once upon a time, it's a fairy tale per se, not necessarily meant to be taken so seriously, but I, wish it was because it's such a better outcome
It's
than,
such
what we
it's
were
such an
served in real
ingenious
life.
device because like obviously he's showing us what we all wish would have happened. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
he's showing us like a better and like he does the same thing in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I love too.
Yep.
And Django. So
Yes.
I really like how again I was actually having just done Pulp Fiction. I felt like there was a lot of like crossover actually that was interesting because I've never like really paired these films together ever.
Mm-hmm.
But like I felt like the different chapters, just like how Pulp Fiction is, the Bonnie situation, like this is also chapterized. Um,
Yes.
you mentioned like the music, that's in all of his movies really, but um, I guess like blending kind of the more Western style, like you said, with like David Bowie, it's like,
Yes,
which I
exactly.
know some people push back on that choice too, because it's not like period accurate. I don't really have an issue with. It depends, I guess, on the context of the scene. I thought it worked in there, but I
Yeah.
remember even in Django, he does the same thing again, where he used like Rick Ross and like Tupac, like and I'm just like, I mean, does it matter? Like, is it it's making you feel something, right? Like, it's making you, it's bringing in like what he always does, bringing in like a modern style to another period of time,
Exactly.
which is like World War II.
And
In
it's
this
fun.
movie,
It's really fun.
hmm yeah, I think it works.
Same.
I think like also what elevates this over Pulp Fiction in a lot of ways, at least for me, is that like Pulp Fiction may have more quotable dialogue easily, like that's just ingrained in the pop culture zeitgeist at this point.
Right.
Um, I feel like the segments in this one are just like some of his best written suspenseful. Like that's kind of like what is missing in Pulp Fiction for me. I was trying to think like why I don't put it as like a masterpiece.
Okay.
And I think it's just because he does have like these interesting characters that are having these interesting conversations, but like we know that once the hitmen enter the apartment at the beginning, like they're basically like untouchable. It seems like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, in this one, I'm worried. Even though I know what happens, I'm like worried for all the characters. Where I'm just like, oh my god, like you could talk about certain scenes, like the opening with the farmer, where
Right.
the way it goes on for like a good like 15 minutes, like this
It's
one
epic.
sequence, and
Mhm.
it is like so pulse pounding, because it's like it's just the performances, of like the farmer, trying to play it cool, but like you have this German officer who's like
Yep. And
playing it
you know
even
his
cooler.
reputation.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
pushing his buttons, and then you have the basement scene, which is another like pretty long extended sequence,
So
um
good.
but never boring, like the conversations are always interesting. You're like, oh shit, like, it just keeps getting worse and worse. That's how he's ramping up the tension, where it's like,
Yes.
we're in a basement. One,
Right.
there's Nazis here, which we didn't know there's gonna be Nazis
There.
here.
That's right.
We're undercover, like we're secret agents, and probably I would say the agent work in this, being a James Bond fan, is pretty terrible. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
James
It's a
Bond
little
gets
loose.
James Bond gets a lot of flack for like he just walks into any room and like
Gets
gets
away with it.
and yeah, I would say that the spy work. I mean, even at the end, it's just like laughable. Where like Brad Pitt and his cronies are supposed to be these Italian men.
Buongiorno. Yeah,
they,
exactly.
they barely know
Exactly.
any Italian whatsoever. It's just like, but I
Yeah,
love
it's
that.
interesting. They don't, like there have been satirical movies in the past that have turned Nazis into bumbling idiots to dismantle, how scary it was at that time.
Yeah.
And this movie really doesn't do that. This movie is like, no, these are like the scariest people you can imagine. They are the most vile monsters that have existed in our history. And I'm not going to pull any punches there. I feel like that's
Right.
what's so interesting about using the Western motif is that, like, in a Western, there's always that sort of like Mexican standoff with eye contact that's happening in every scene,
Hmm.
but it plays so well here because Christoph Waltz is truly, a monster, staying
Hmm.
very calm and doing what he can to put you into a place of discomfort. He's so good at what he does, it's scary. And I
Yeah.
love that about, that opening scene and then about the way that the soldier acts when they're in the bar scene when they don't even know that he's there. They think there are some bumbling Nazis in
Mhm.
here and we're going to be just fine, and then that guy is there and you're
And
like,
even
oh
like, and yeah,
shit.
even like the drunken one notices that his accent is weird very fast.
Yep.
So it's like, again, like you said, even though he's bumbling from drunkenness, still smart enough to be like, hey, your accent's weird. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
so like, yeah, more than capable opponents. Yeah, just very scary, like all around, and just this like ever present like fear, just like in the
Yes.
air of like, putting that guy, the farmer dad at the beginning, in an impossible situation that so many families had to be put in,
Right.
where do I worry about my own family or do I try and help this family? It's again, it's Sophie's choice. Like that's the verb
Seriously.
right now. It's like,
Yep.
what am I supposed to do in this situation? I love like
Yeah, there's no winning.
all of the sexism and misogyny like stuff that gets hailed at QT. It's like I love the female characters in this one like really hard. Like
Yes.
I
Yes.
think they're so
They're
badass.
very brave. Yeah.
And the Western like thing that you said, like I think he kind of flips that and makes it like more empowering actually for like the women, because in a usual Western, if the scene at the beginning was Shoshana, like if that happened, then you would have like a guy roll in and like avenge that family.
Her.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
he'd do it for her.
And then
Right.
this one, Shoshana's like, we're gonna blow this theater up. Like she comes
That's
up with
right.
the
We're
idea.
gonna do this.
And
Yeah.
even when her guy friend like tries to push back a little bit, she's like, "No, you're talking about that." She goes, "No, we're talking
We're
about
talking about it.
that."
That's right. Yeah, and who
uh,
would even cut this for us? And she's like, someone we're gonna
we're
threaten to
gonna
make them
make
cut it for
someone
us.
cut it for. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
The last thing I wrote down too, which I think, again, some crossover with Pulp Fiction. I think QT is really interested in like cultural differences, which I am
Yes.
too. Like just like
Yes.
there can be two different cultures, maybe not even that far apart from each other, but like there's just these little nuances. So like the English 3 versus the German 3, like
Yes.
who would think of that?
So good.
It's like it's such a simple thing, and now every time I see it and it gets to that zoom of the three fingers, I'm like, oh, you fucking idiot. Like I
Yep.
knew that at the time.
It's so good. Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, just like in Pulp Fiction with the Royale with cheese, like he's just honing in on these like little differences we have across different cultures. And I think
Yeah, that would give you away.
the most masterful thing about the script is like the way it switches between languages, which is just like it's so awesome. Like
I love
I
it.
love it. Like because of course you have like the German and like Hans Landa and all these people speaking it and the Nazi soldiers, but then he's speaking to the farmer in French at the beginning.
Yeah, because they're in France, right? They're
Yeah.
not in Nazi Germany, which is like another really unique
Which you
choice,
don't
right?
think about. You don't think about,
Right.
right? You just think of, oh, Germans speaking German in Germany or whatever. It's like, no, it
Right.
was actually like spread out so much farther than that. And so you would have to speak different languages. And so like
Yeah, like when
obviously, like,
Christoph Waltz speaks the most fluent Italian at the end, and they're like,
oh my god,
"Shit."
I know, yeah, like so you got Italian in this thing, like the French, and like again, when he switches to English, and
Yes,
you're thinking the first time you watch it, you're just thinking like whatever. Like, he says, "Oh, my French is so bad, I don't want to embarrass myself." And
right.
then you watch this enough times and you realize, oh, he's switching to English because he doesn't want the Jews underneath the floorboard to hear their
Exactly.
conversation. He's just like
Exactly.
thinking 10 steps ahead. And it's so diabolically evil. Like he
Yes.
even says it at the end of that scene where he's like, "You are gonna keep up with my masquerade, and unless you want your family to get hurt," basically.
Yep.
Um, and again, just like picking up on Michael Fassbender's weird accent. Again, that's not something I don't think I've ever seen in a movie of someone being like, "Your accent's weird." It's like
Yeah,
they just like
something's not
speak
right about
they just
you.
speak another
Mhm.
language and you just go with it because that's what the
Right.
script is worried with. But like again, QT is interested in these cultural differences of like, where are you from? How did like and I
Yeah, how are you one of us?
yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it makes it like suspenseful because like he's pointing out these differences between these people, and then at the center of it, the titular bastards are American Englishmen who like I just love like the line where Diane Kruger's like, "I know it's pointless in asking, but do any of you Americans speak any language other than English?"
Other than English. Yep. Yep.
Which is like to this day so true.
Well, the
Like,
2 that spoke German are dead
I
because they
know.
both went into the bar because they were the most authentic, and, like, that's what's, harsh about this too is that, like, nobody is safe. Even these bastards who we wanna see win, like, they have to give their
Well,
life
that's a
to
detail I love too,
for
where
the
like
mission.
they have the German, that are fighting for the
Yep.
bastards, and so again, you just think like, yeah, they're translators, whatever, and then once they get taken out, they're like, oh shit, what are we gonna do now? Like, we don't have
Right.
anyone that speaks German or any other
Yeah, yeah.
language, and so
I
but
like that as like a unique American strength too, is that like because the US is supposed to be founded on a kind of diversity where you could come from anywhere and be an American or something. There's something nice about how like so the American team is made up of like a German who doesn't want to follow these things, a
mhm,
German who doesn't agree, and like that's the American strength is that they would all team up with each other, not try to like verse each other.
yeah.
But you run out of that at the same time.
I mean, and even like the scenes again, and QT is just so great at this, like where lines are getting translated from different languages to each other. He makes those exciting. Like I was
Yeah.
thinking of like the first scene where you see the bastards in that trench,
Yeah.
and the last Nazi guy is surviving, and they have the German guy translating for him, and he's like, what are you gonna do when you get home? And then it like whip pans to him, whip pans to the translator, whip pans to Brad Pitt, like
Yep.
never like again making like what would be a boring scene in any other movie like really exciting, really fast paced. And then like he's loosely translating it, he's not doing it like perfectly, where he's like, he said he's gonna hug his mom.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, I love it. Like he just feels like he's firing on all cylinders. He's taking everything he's learned from his movies up until this point, and like you said, all these influences of exploitation films, World War II films, westerns, and like rolling it into like one big ball. And it's like,
Yes,
which
a
he's so good
beautiful
at,
ball.
where he's so good
Mhm.
at, and it works. Like I love this film.
Yeah, it has such a good flow, because like, it's long like all of his films are, but it just has such a good flow where it, like, perfectly stretches things out for the right reasons, it's never indulgent, and I think that's what I love about QT movies too, is that, like, even though they're long, they never feel indulgent to me. I know critics maybe sometimes, like, look at them that way or
Yeah.
feel about them that way,
That's such
but
a
if you really
lazy
think about the
criticism.
over
I hate that
Exactly,
criticism so
because
much.
if you
All
think about the
films are indulgent.
overarch
All films are indulgent, like,
Exactly. That's the we came here to watch a story.
yeah.
Like, it needs to be indulgent. But especially here, it's just as tight as all of his other movies. There's nothing every scene matters because it's gonna build on something that you're gonna see later. It has to do with something you've already seen. It's bringing things together. And I really love that about this too, is that it's sort of like that chapter perfectly ends where it's supposed to, this chapter begins where that one ended.
Two laziest forms of criticism for me is when they say indulgent or pretentious. I'm
Right.
like, I see those words, I'm automatically like, oh boy, okay, here we
Yeah,
go.
you just weren't in the mood for it. Why don't you just cop to
Yeah.
that, right? You weren't in the mood for this type of story, and now you're talking shit. And man, this movie is what a great rewatch. We should get into some of these performances because this is also like,
Go ahead, yeah.
again, he continues to expand his troupe. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
even though Samuel L. doesn't get to play a main part in this
He
story,
gets some
he's doing
narration.
voiceover.
He gets some
Exactly.
narration.
You know,
We got
he's
him in
still
there.
here. Yep,
Yep.
we're still working with him. But it's like, this is the beginning of like any and every actor being like, I will do a single scene in a Quentin Tarantino movie if it's available to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to our next segment called Choose Your Fighter.
Welcome to the party, pal.
This is where we take a look at all the bros and babes that flex their acting muscles and sometimes their real muscles for us movie buffs. The film stars Brad Pitt, Melanie Laurent, Christoph Waltz, Daniel Bruhl, Michael Fassbender, Diane Kruger, BJ Novak. We keep going.
Eli
going.
Roth,
Eli
Mike
Roth,
Myers, fucking
Sam
everybody's
Levine.
here.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
everybody
crazy.
is here. And obviously we have to talk about Christoph Waltz, right? Because he gets an Oscar for this. So this is
Yeah.
like a huge thing too, where, I mean, obviously he earned it. Like every time I rewatch this and I see his performance, I'm like, this dude is so good.
I
Like,
mean,
it's amazing that he's sort of found in this story.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the fact because I remember Quentin Tarantino saying like I want someone who is fluent in these languages. I don't want some
Right.
because he knows this villain needs to have an authenticity to him. There can't be like
Right.
any sense of doubt that this guy is like evil personified. Like you need to see this guy and be like,
Yep.
there's something under the surface here that he's using his not like he's a smart guy and he's using these skills of like finding
He's a
people
genius.
and like detective work and language skills and like being able to like switch personalities and like kind of cornball too, like when he's trying to like make jokes at the end like that's a bingo, you know.
Yes. How do you say? Yes.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I'm working to be a perfect American now too, right? Like now I'm going to adopt that persona because whatever persona works for me to manipulate and have what I want, I can command.
And the more times you see this movie too, like all of his movie, I think there's suspense that comes from like even when you're not expecting it. Like I'm thinking of, for example, with the scene where Shoshana has lunch with Hans
Yes.
Landa for like the first time since she ran away. And so the
Right.
first thing you're thinking is, does he know that this is Shoshana?
Especially because he orders the milk.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna
And you're
say.
like,
And then if you did it, if QT does a thing where he's like, if you don't, or you're not already thinking that, maybe the audience isn't paying attention enough. He has that line where he's like, I have something I want to talk to you about. And she's like, oh shit. He's like, but I can't remember it. I don't know. You know? And it's like, dude, it's like you're on the edge of your, I don't care how many times I've seen this movie. Every time I'm like, fuck, does he know? And I love that he doesn't answer it. You know, it's like, you don't need to know, but there's like a level of, you know, there's another extra layer that makes that scene so good.
And there's also something to how like he uniquely prefers to watch people squirm than to just kill them. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like he only with his own hands kills one person that we see, right? In the other scenes we see him sort of order other people to do that work for him.
Mhm.
So I think he prefers like if he does know, I think he would rather her be alive so he could keep torturing her. Right? If he just killed her, then the game would be done. And it does seem like he really loves the game of forcing people to listen to him because, you know, when he's with Diane Kruger, she has to listen to everything that he says. When he's with Shoshana,
Yeah.
she has to listen to everything he says. Brad Pitt must listen to everything he says. And there's something kind of fun about how like that's actually how he gets to people is by just like torturing them because they're forced to listen to him.
Well, yeah, and then he's using that like, you know, fake politeness. I feel like all the German officers do that in this movie too,
Yes.
where it's like, you know, at the end when he laughs at her leg, like way too loud, way too long.
Yeah.
And again, where you're just like, he knows that she's lying.
And so does she.
And so
You can see it on her
And so
face.
he's gonna let her know. Oh, that's the story you came up with.
And where in Paris are the mountains again? Like,
and
so good.
asking them to speak Italian, you know,
Yeah,
like
repeat
what's
themselves.
what's your name again? You know, say it with some music, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, he really is like it turned gaslighting into a fun dance in with this
Oh
character.
God. Brad Pitt, I mean, he
So
just
fun. So fun.
yeah, I mean, I was talking with my coworker today and I was just saying like if I took a list of my favorite movies, Brad Pitt would probably be in about 4 or 5 of them. Like honestly, like this
He is
guy,
prolific.
even
Mhm.
if you're like don't think of him as maybe like the best like quote unquote actor, you know, losing himself in the roles or whatever, he's just there and he's like doing what he's needs to do in each movie. You know what I mean? Like in like so
Yep.
I'm thinking of like Seven, Ocean's 11, Fight Club,
Yep.
which we just did. Like
Yep.
this movie, like he just has so many like bangers. And so here, even though like yes he gets overshadowed by Walt's, you know, just doing like one of the best villain performances of all time, he still finds a way to like make it entertaining, make it funny. He's got that southern accent, you know, just makes all of his dialogue just like kind of jump off the page.
Yes. Yes.
Playing like Aldo the Apache.
Right.
You know, we've
Right.
that scene with the Italian at the end is just like next level all timer, you know,
It's so good.
Gorlami. Gorlami.
Yes, yes. And also, it's amazing that he's the perfect foible because Christoph
Yeah.
Waltz uses like sophistication as his main weapon, and Brad Pitt uses the brute force, and it does win out in the end,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, it's not someone you would think of like as his equal, but he does, you
He
know,
truly
he
is.
does overpower him by the end. You know, he does win out in the end. I mean, Fassbender. I always forget Fassbender's in this movie, and that's not to say that like as a diss or anything. He's just in it for so short of
Yeah,
a
he just has
time,
that one sequence.
but
Mhm.
he's so good in that. Like I love the scene leading up to that where like again, I feel like he's purposefully being like, "Oh, this guy is a smooth criminal. He's just like Bond." You know, where like Mike
Yes.
Myers is debriefing him or whatever and he's like,
And I love the blocking of that scene
"Yeah."
too, how they're all like really far away from each other when
Yeah.
it begins. It's
You know,
so
he's
good.
like, "Oh, the drinks are in the globe," you know, and he's like,
Yep.
you know, and there's again all this like Bond agent, double agent shit where like, oh, this guy, again, we're thinking, you think this guy's gonna be untouchable, you know, like
Right.
he's
Right.
getting all the answers right. You know, I'm a film critic. I've written 2 books. Like, oh, he's smart. He's smart.
Yep.
He's
He's
gonna
going to be ready for this.
and then you get into the battlefield, the actual battlefield. None of that means shit, you know?
No.
Like,
Nope. No, and when he tries to use his ego to get him out of things, it makes him look worse,
hmm.
right? Like he can't. Kruger is trying so hard to smooth things over in that scene. I love her in this movie
She's
too. This is
so
like one of my
good.
favorite. Yeah, she's
Yes.
so good. Because I feel like she does represent, you know, like an authentic piece of World War II. Like many female actresses were doing what they could during the war to like make things happen and be spies
Double
in really
agents.
interesting ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's such a cool thing for her to kind of honor. And Fassbender just like can't allow it. It's like just play the game with this fucking guy. If you just play the game with this guy, you'll win him over
I
like I
kind
have.
of, in kind of his defense, he blows it. And I think he knows, like, I am not built for this, like,
Yeah.
spy shit. And so he
Yep.
is, like, trying to flee. Like, that's,
Yeah,
like, his
trying to
instinct.
escape. Yep.
And he does blow it, you know? So maybe he was right in trying to get this guy. I mean, I love how that scene is even, like, blocked too, because, like, you think, like, oh, there's just some drunken German guys, you know? It's, you know, they're gonna get away with this, and then little do you know, there's that one dude in the back that we've seen with
Yeah, that we
Shoshana.
know is important.
Yeah, and you know, and he, you know, similar to Landa, I think they're like the most two related, like two similar characters
Right.
of the like the German party, in that they love to like draw things out. It's not like, you know, they're not satisfied with the simple like asking them, "Are you a spy?" They want you to
Yes.
fuck it up. You know,
They're really playing a game of chicken,
yeah, I want to
right?
catch you in the lie, you know?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's sadistic. It really is. It's like really sadistic and
Yep.
you know, so yeah, I think he's great. I think she's great. I put her name down too because it's just so good. Bridget von Hammersmark.
Yes. Such a
With
good name.
such a QT name of coming up with like fake, actor. I mean, that sounds like a believable actress back in the day. I'm not
It
gonna
does. Yeah, like a German actress who everybody would love in Germany who could like totally slide through during, Nazi occupation and still be like, "I'll take the champagne."
And then I think the last one we really need to talk about is Melanie Laurent, who's Shoshana. Like,
Yes.
she's like, I would say probably
Big face.
the closest we get to like a protagonist in this.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, this is really kind of her story and the others are little chapters outside of
mhm.
that.
And like, you could, even like for the bastards, it's like they're doing these, like, they're scalping people, and so like some
Right.
people might be like, can we call them protagonists if they're doing
Yeah, they're
these
like the
evil things?
gang in the
Yeah.
Western, right? They're not the
Yeah.
main guy, but the main guy maybe messes with that gang here or there, and they do come together in the end. Their plans come together.
But Shoshana's like the one character where, like, you would see in a Tarantino arc like Kill Bill, where like
Right.
her husband and her whole family get shot down and murdered in the very opening scene, and just like Shoshana's does,
Yep.
and so now we're going to follow her, and so even though she's burning people, she's burning Nazis, and
Right.
it's
That's totally fine.
in her own theater, so it's
Yeah.
like, what I mean, you guys came into my doorstep,
And she has
asking.
to give up she has to give her life for this mission,
I know, it's so sad every time. I forget about that every time too, actually, that she dies, and it's just like, fuck, man.
Fuck,
I
it's
wish
true.
she could have
It's
made it
true.
out.
Same.
Do you know if her friend dies too? I don't
I
think.
don't think so. I
Or do you
think
think he
he
makes it
lights
out?
it and he is able to walk out because he came in through the back. So I
Okay,
think he's the only
that was
maybe survivor
one
there.
kind of open-ended question where it's like you never see him leave, but like
Right.
I'm hoping there's a door somewhere in that back area where he can just
I think so.
take it out.
Yeah, I think so. He did some good work there. I think that's true. I just love too how like everybody, they're so dead set on this mission that like even if they can't get out, they're like, we're still gonna kill as many as we can. Like
Mhm.
Eli Roth and the other guy, Dominic DiCoco, that
Di
dude.
Coco.
The
Yeah, I love, like,
way
he's
that
like, "I
they're
don't speak any German." He goes, "Exactly, the third."
the third best, right? Exactly. So
Don't
good.
say anything.
And yeah, like, just how everybody has a kind of mission and they're willing to give their life for it. No one is like
Yeah.
afraid or no one has any time to try to like outsmart it. They just try to go with the plan that they feel the best about.
All right, 2 more performances. I lied because I feel like there's so many people in here. I think the only bad performance in this movie is Eli Roth. I don't know, there
You
might
don't
be a
like his Boston accent?
he's just, no, he's overdoing
I just
it,
love the
and just,
nickname the Bear Jew. It's
I mean,
so
it's a
good.
great name, it's a great
Yeah.
character, but,
Yep.
like, every time he, like, comes in and he's like, hits it out of the fucking ballpark, and he's like, it's so
little much.
ridiculous. I'm like, bro, we could have used another take, maybe, QT. I don't know. Or
Right.
do you know who was
I
originally supposed to be in that part? I want to ask you
No,
this too,
who?
because if you think this would be better or worse, because it's interesting. Adam Sandler was originally supposed to be the Bear Jew. Better or worse with Adam
I
Sandler in
mean,
that
it
part?
would absolutely be better,
Yeah.
right? Like obviously.
I
But that's
think
such an
so much better
interesting.
because, like, Adam Sandler has that rage underneath in all of his
Yeah,
you know
and
what I
it's like
mean?
it's the right kind of comedic rage that
Yeah.
Roth is trying to put on that
Yeah.
Sandler just like knows how to tap into.
So, like, Eli Roth physically, yeah, he does look the part. I'll say that. He's very physically
Yeah,
imposing
he
or
looks like a
whatever.
bear in the gay
Um
community. He really does.
I didn't even think about it like that. That is hilarious.
He's like sort of hairy and buff, like he has that. Um,
The Bear Jew. All right,
it's so good.
and then Daniel Bruhl. I just want to talk about him because I think he's the one that's like most apart from the German soldiers we see. And like at first, I could see some people being worried, like, is he trying to humanize the Nazis or whatever, right? With this
I think
character.
that's like the power of his character actually is to be like,
But I
Nazis
know.
did win a lot of people over. Like that's the
Yeah.
problem.
But then, like, you see at the end, he is just another incel. He's just
Exactly.
another. That's his whole shtick. It's not that he actually cares for her. It's just
Nope.
him, just like Landa, using his power in a way that benefits him. In this case, romantically or whatever.
Right. Right.
And so I just love like how that plays out, because that might be like the one thing where you could, like, I could see some people trying to be like, oh, what's this character? Like, Why
I
is
feel
he?
like that's what's so powerful about the turn is that
Yes,
like he is
yeah,
trying to help you understand like this is how Nazis won people over. Like they appeared to be sophisticated. They appeared to have maybe good manners even, and they
yeah.
appeared to have
I'm
humility.
just
Like
a
when he's like,
fellow, I'm
"Oh,
just a
I'm just
fellow
one
film
man."
buff, you know, like
Exactly, exactly.
and
And when he
she's just,
finally is like, "I can no longer take the fact that you just keep
yeah.
rejecting me." And she's like, "All right, we'll lock the door." And he like, is so
Oh,
confused. I
oh,
love that. And I love, yeah, I guess like I just love how that turn reminds us that like, nope, they were all monsters. They were always lying, even the
just
nicest
different.
of
He
them.
just shows us like the different forms, which I really like. Like I think
Yes.
um, yeah, it's a smart way to show it that they're not all this like laughing at the sky evil. Like some of them can come as your friend, and like let's
The
talk
most
through these
dangerous ones come
together.
that way.
Aren't I a pest? Like this. Oh
Yes,
man,
I
like
thought I would do what I'm good at, which
yeah,
is pestering you. Like, oh God, so annoying. And it's
it,
true, like similar to Waltz's character, like you can't say no to a Nazi when they're in
oh
charge of
exactly.
everything.
So yeah, let's go to this next segment here called the need for speed.
Pain don't hurt.
In this segment, we do what the Oscars don't do and honor the amazing stuntmen and women for their death-defying work and pick out the punch that knocked us out the most. All right, what are the stunts that stick with you?
Yeah, there's quite a few in here. Even though I would say most of them end in death. So this was
Yes,
hard to just
this
pick
is
out the
right.
stunts.
Yep.
I guess I would go, the bullet through the leg. Just because like, you get that you see the scene where like under the table where there's just bullets like flying, through the air and all this wood and dust.
I love
Um,
it.
and then it leads to like that veterinary like vet putting it out of her leg and having to put a cast on it, so that stuff is just gross because it's like ugh, like you just see the
Yeah.
pool of blood underneath it. I was noticing this time like it feels like
Yes.
such a real wound.
Yeah, and
uh
her being like, "I'm probably gonna lose this leg."
yeah. Bye red carpet,
Yeah, exactly.
like such an actress reaction to it, like not even like I can't walk the same. It's like
Nope, it's like, "But there goes my career,
yeah.
thanks."
I said number two, the whiplashes on Hugo. He
Yeah,
would
you can
return
see
to
them.
this in Django. It's just very unsettling, but like
Oof.
you,
Like,
I think,
seeing the skin kinda snap open like that is really
yeah.
nasty.
I've never seen that guy like in other movies. He doesn't really look familiar to me, but like he just has that face where it's just like this guy's been through some shit, like. And so when they show that flashback of like him getting whipped in the back, and they do kind of a match cut to that, like him remembering that, and then that German
Yes.
soldier like really hitting him on the shoulder like really hard, and you're
Yep.
just like, ooh, is this guy gonna snap? Like, what's gonna, like,
Right?
uh,
Yeah, and in the end, what's so funny is, like, Fassbender gives them shit being like, "I know you, so I need to know that you're gonna be able to keep it cool," and
yeah.
Fassbender's the one who fucking loses his cool?
Right. I like, yeah, that whole scene before that is really funny too, where he's like, not the loquacious type, is he? And Brad Pitt's like, is that what you need in there? The loquacious type?
Right? I wasn't sure that's what you needed,
uh
okay.
Same thing where he's like, do I not look cool to you? Like
Yes.
just turning it back on him. And then number one, just the knife, to make the permanent swastika. It's like
Epic.
one of the
I figured at one point you're gonna have to take off that silly uniform.
yeah, it's
I
like
gotta give you something you can't take off.
again, like Pulp Fiction, I was thinking of Jules, and his speech that he says before he kills everybody. Brad Pitt has this speech he says before he puts the swastika on everybody. Like,
Yep.
and just like how Sam Jackson, that was a breakthrough performance. I was thinking the same thing with Christoph Waltz in here. A lot of parallels I was finding in here. I don't know about you, but
Oh,
yeah,
I love it.
I just love that trademark, and like how the first time it's like you're getting really good at that, boss.
Yeah, he really is.
And of course, like the final shot where he's like, I think this might be my masterpiece, which a lot of people, myself included, took that as QT being like this film, because there's a lot of like crossover with film and filmmaking, like
Right.
German history, propaganda, the fact Michael
Yes.
Fassbender, his character is a film critic, and
Yep.
that Diane Kruger's character is an actress. Like he's really and then Shoshana owning the movie
Yeah,
theater, and
and the evolution of like what film used to be made on, like all kinds of history.
that film inherently is a dangerous medium because it burns up. There's a lot. There was
Yes.
this great essay we read in college about this. I can't remember the name of it, but like
Mm,
that film is dangerous. It was basically going to that concept. Film is dangerous inherently because it burns so much faster, but also because politically what it can do, which I think again is
yep.
like at the heart of this movie, which is why I love it. So
I love it so much too. Yes,
yeah.
same, same.
What about you?
Yeah, I think I had some, similar feelings about the stunts in the open when Christoph Waltz is like, "Okay, your daughters can come back in, but it's really the soldiers," and then they light up the floor and the wood is going everywhere. I love that. It's just so visually
I
stimulating, and you
didn't.
like really get
Yeah.
it.
I didn't pick up on it till this time either, but again, I'm always thinking of Bond. I love Bond. But like Christoph Waltz played Blofeld, and then one of the daughters from the beginning was that French actress who would be
Yes,
Mrs.
Lea
Mrs.
Seydoux.
Mrs. Bond,
That's
so it's just
right.
like, oh, okay, QT maybe had an eye for some of these actors that would go on to be in this franchise.
Right?
So
Even
awesome.
if I don't say anything, I'm still gonna be in your movie, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm there. So yeah, I just like that as like just a fun kind of simple stunt. I think the scalping effect is like really
Oh,
effective and
so gross.
intense. Yeah, like a good one. I also
Right?
really like
Yeah.
again when when they're showing his like kill rant that he was on before he got caught and was getting whipped and everything, how he
Yeah.
like shoved his hand down that dude's throat, just like kept shoving it into his mouth, was so gnarly looking.
That
And I was
was
like, how the
actually
fuck did they do that?
yeah, that's that guy actually, it's a thing I caught this time too, is Greg Nicotero, who's a legendary makeup effects artist who
Of
Quentin
course.
Tarantino has used for a long time.
Gonna need him.
So yeah, putting his whole fist in his mouth, which is like I don't know what he was trying to accomplish, but it's disgusting. Like
Yeah, like choking him from the inside. I don't even know, but it looked really, really cool.
so gross.
And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you with like the bullet hole in the leg and how Brad Pitt, like, there's like that insert of him putting his finger in there to really like test,
Yeah.
how serious she's going to take this because,
Mhm.
she really could have, she put them in a kind of compromised position. She didn't mean to. And I kind of love how she's like, okay, I can see because you
Yeah.
weren't there
Yeah.
that you don't understand
Well, and
this.
her desperation when he puts the finger in, she's like, "It's either a tragic coincidence or a setup. It can't be both." Like
That's
she's
right. It can't be both. You have to decide. Yeah, she's just so good. She really gets a chance to do a lot with the
she has
couple
a
of
lot of
sequences she's
good,
in.
like
Um,
subtle face acting moments that like I really stood out to
yes.
me. Like especially when Hans comes at the end and like you said, like he's laughing at her and you just see on her face like, "Oh, we're so fucked." Like
I also love that her cast is a heel so that she can wear
yeah.
heels.
Oh,
That's
I
maybe the
know.
best as well. Like just a little
So
quirk where
good.
you're like, yeah, if you were an actor, you would get this so
Or
that
how
you can
about
still walk the carpet.
when Londa's like reach into my coat pocket and when she feels that it's a heel and her face just drops. Like
Yes.
one
It's
more
like
okay,
the
one more
one time you don't want to be Cinderella.
I know. I thought they were gonna make a joke about that too. I'm surprised they didn't. But yeah, I guess one more face my favorite face acting too is like how Hans Landa the entire movie has a shit eating grin on his face for like pretty much all of it. And then
Yes.
at the end when he realizes that Brad Pitt is screwing him over and he just has that like dead look like of like shock
And
like
he's
I
also
can't
kind of scared. Like he's like,
yeah.
What? I protected this guy. You can't do this."
And because and he's told Brad Pitt, Aldo Rain, I've interviewed every person that you've let go. He knows what's coming. Like
Right.
so in that fear, he's like, I'm getting marked. Like this
When
is
you
the
get to
same
your house
pattern.
in Nantucket, you're gonna take that silly little uniform off. It's so good. It's too good.
Hey, I'll take that deal. That's a good deal. That's a damn
That
good
is a
deal.
good deal. Yeah. Oh man. God, it's so good. So
uh,
good. All
uh,
right. That takes us to our
yeah.
next segment called Death Proof.
If he dies, he dies.
This is where you take a look at the movie's body count, see who bit the dust the hardest. You got
Well,
Shanti.
as we stated, a bazillion kills in this movie. All so fun. Yep, all so fun and so masterful. I think, the first thing I'll start with is performance notwithstanding, I do like the sequence when the Bear Jew comes out to kill the Nazi captain with his bat, just the like sound down
Very
the,
well.
dark alleyway
Yeah.
there, and the fear that they're building with it. And then also like, I guess that's kind of like a stunt and kill, like the way that he hits that guy in the head with the bat is so gnarly. And then he's just beating the dude's head in.
Yeah.
Very gnarly,
And it's
but
it's
also
a
rewarding.
it's a pullback shot where they don't show, they just show the corpse on the ground, but you see like the head just being thrown
Oh,
around like a
smashed
like
in.
whipped around as it's being
Ugh,
smashed, which is like
so
so
bad.
gross.
But rewarding because you want this to happen to Nazis. So even though it's like totally grotesque, you're like, yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
damn right,
One of my
you
favorite
know?
lines too, where Brad Pitt says, "We got a man who wants to die for country. Oblige him."
Yes, exactly.
Like he was like low key excited. Like I was hoping you were going to say that. That's
Yep,
the
we wanted to
closest we
kill
get to
you.
the
We didn't
movies.
want to work with you. Because even though I like marking y'all, I don't like letting you live.
Yeah, we got three
It's so
people we
good.
can question, so we got some bodies we could,
Yes,
expendable.
yes. Yeah, I feel like number 2 is kind of a two-parter because I like in the basement shootout when Kruger shoots the father, the one that she was like, think about
At
your
the
son,
bar.
like,
Or
don't
oh no,
do
that
it.
guy. Yeah,
But
yeah,
then, that guy is like, if you just get this whore out of here. And she's like, pop, pop, fuck you,
yeah.
man. I
This fucking
love that.
traitor out of my face.
Yes, I love that. But also when Christoph Waltz kills her, like strangles her, it's fucking so real
Oh
looking.
yeah.
It is
I guess
really hard to watch, gnarly.
that might be the one thing of like what's aged the worst maybe is like the behind the scenes of that where like I guess QT is the one that chokes her out because he said it wasn't realistic enough, I guess.
Oh shit,
So
I didn't know about that.
I was
Fuck.
trying to look for the hands, and the hands do seem like a little bit smaller, or like different than, I don't know. Maybe
Interesting.
I don't know if it's real
Yeah,
or
it's a
not,
very
but if
effective death because it does feel like he like hits his own breaking point with her, where like she is just as smooth as he is and I
yeah,
don't think he can handle it.
where she kind of like gives in that moment too, where she's like, "What now?" Like, ugh,
Yeah, she's like,
you know,
"Okay, so you caught me in the lie." And
yeah,
I guess like it also seems like she's not that afraid of him. Like every other person who deals with him is like, "This guy's going to kill me." And there's something about how she's sort of like, "Well, what are you going to do?" Like she's not
well,
necessarily
maybe it's
thinking
that
he's
thing
going
you
to
said
explode and
about
strangle her.
maybe it's that thing you said about like other people do the killing for him. So maybe she's just like not prepared for like him to do any of the work, like
Right.
you
Yeah,
know,
she's assuming you don't really even do this. So what?
yeah.
What?
Uh,
And that never do that to one of those guys. Don't do that.
yeah.
Don't
Not
do
to a
not do
Nazi.
that.
Don't recommend.
No, no. But I think my favorite kill for sure is those bullets ripping into Hitler's face in the cinema sequence. It's such a good sequence, great deaths all around, but just like Eli Roth, that look on his face of like, this fucking guy is going
Oh
down,
my
and then, the
god. I
face just kind of
know.
exploding with bullets. So, so good.
Yeah, it's I mean, we had kind of the same one, so I'm not gonna like, I would say like the Bear Jew is just like you said, the sound design, like when the score kicks in and he's holding it up to his face like, are you ready? Like you're this, any last words or whatever. The basement bar scene, I love like how fast the violence is. Like again, QT gets all this shit for being so violent, and that scene, the violence is like over in like a second. It's like
Yes, it's so fast.
it's so fast. Everyone gets gunned down, and then it's just like this confusion where the dad is just like, what is happening? I went to the bathroom for 1 second,
Yes,
and Aldo and
and
him have
everyone's
that.
dead.
Yeah, they have that conversation from the stairs. I love that like little the negotiation where he's like, no gun you, me no gun, you no gun.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I thought we had a deal.
It's a Mexican standoff. So I love that, and like I said, it goes on for such a long time. You don't think that's how it's gonna go, you think, but when it does happen, it's like you see like the women at the table like getting fucking shot up, and just you see
Everybody.
Hugo getting knifing the German soldier on the table, which is like gruesome. It's like ugh,
Mm, so
so
rewarding.
much. And then he's like, "Yeah, sayonara to your nuts, Nazi bastard."
Yes.
And then yeah, number one has to be the theater at the end. I mean, giant
So good.
face. I love that how it's set up. I am
Yep,
the
in
Jew
the
who's
smoke.
going to do it.
That's right. That's right.
And then yeah, machine gunning Hitler through the face. the dynamite exploding, the film is the thing
The
killing the German.
handgun bullets,
Yeah, you
that
see
they
in the
like punch
trailer.
with. Yep.
Yeah, like where he's, champagne, senor, you know. So I mean, I think those are probably like the most iconic. I mean, I also love like those little flashback ones when they break Hugo out of jail, and it's like again very fast. There's one guy that's still alive, and you just see like this one guy run across the screen like with the machine gun, and you're just like,
Yep.
holy shit! Like they
Yep.
feel like ghost like, and even Hitler in the movie says that, like that. The way they keep escaping, it's like an apparition or something,
Yes. 999.
So yeah, that takes us to our next segment called Exit Wounds.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
This is where we'll talk about the film's imperfections and decide whether they're fatal hits or just minor flesh wounds. What do you got?
I think the only thing I can really like, what was Zolanda's plan? Like, I know that like he's like, I want to be remembered in the history books as the person. Like, he obviously is obsessed with like power, and like no,
Right.
it doesn't matter like what side he ends up on. Like, I get that, but like, why did he think that Aldo would even agree to this? Like literally the first thing in their interrogation, he goes, I bet if the roles were reversed, you wouldn't show me any mercy. And Aldo goes, no, I would not. And it's like, so why would you think that they would show you mercy when you're like, I am surrendering to you now? It's like, that was just, he was like a really good villain and smart villain up until that point. I was like,
Yeah.
you
It's
really
a curious thing.
you really
But I
lost it
think
there.
I was going to say, I think it's like his Achilles heel is like that he thinks he is so
The
much
smartest
smarter
guy
than
in the
everyone
room.
else.
Yeah.
Right, ultimately. And honestly, like, I think that was an important thing. Like, just like Bruhl's turn reminds us that, like, all the Nazis sucked, even if they
Yeah.
pretended to be nice. This is a good reminder, too, of that, like, actually many Nazis made deals to escape prosecution.
Yeah.
And that's, like, a thing that sucks about
Which is why I
how
love the
war
ending
can work sometimes.
where like Brad Pitt's
Exactly.
like, you're not going to Argentina and no one's gonna know your history. Like
That's right.
you're gonna walk
Yeah,
around
you're
with
gonna
this
have
scar
to
for the
wear a
rest of your
hat
life.
for the rest
Yeah.
of your life. That's right. You better never take off your ball cap on Nantucket, like
Yeah.
so
But
funny.
every other thing that like kind of came up where I was like, how does this happen again? Like anything I thought was like a flaw like gets explained or is like perfectly executed within 10 minutes or whatever. So
Yep.
other than that, like no flaws I
Same.
could pick out of this. Really.
Same. I mean, straight up, no notes for me.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I really appreciate all of it. I feel like I feel good about all of it. None of it, I'm like, wait. I'm
Eli
always
Ross
just like, oh,
acting,
that's right.
maybe,
Oh, that's right.
maybe that.
Yeah, maybe, right? But even that, I'm sort of like, yeah, you kind of need to remember that, like, even an idiot gets to shine in a situation like
Because
this.
even when he's like laying in the bed, he's like, yeah, it doesn't take a genius to know you don't do it in the basement. And you're like, dude, oh my, just relax. Just,
Yeah. We're talking over here.
It's like, it makes the accents in Departed look like subtle, I don't know.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a good Boston accent. It's a pretty hard one. They should have maybe went for just a New York accent.
Yeah, something. Just like, I don't know. It's like when QT tried to do the Australian accent in Django, and I'm like, why did you do this to yourself? Like, why?
Right. It couldn't have been that important. It couldn't have been that important.
Just be an American guy. Just be a regular American.
Just be an American guy, please.
Which brings us to our last segment, Game Over, man.
What a picture.
Good picture, yeah.
That is so much fun. I love that stuff, the killing.
A lot of killing.
Yep, in our final segment, we will rate this film out of 5 film canisters. What do you give it?
I give it a 5. I agree with QT's writing that this is one of his masterpieces. He's got a few, and I think this was one that's just like undeniable that he can put his style onto something that the Oscars would respect. Would be like a more respectable Oscar fare, while still having like the violence, the dialogue, all those signatures that like we know and love from Tarantino.
Agreed.
Yeah. What about you?
Yep, this one gets a big 5 for me as well. It's just, it does everything right. It does a war movie right. It does a Western right. It does the violence right. It does the dialogue right. It captures, the tension of this time right. It was such a good rewatch where I was like, God damn, this movie is so fucking
Yeah.
good.
It's like because like his other ones, he has more popular other ones that you just kind of forget. Like I even though I know I think of this as a fiver, I just like rewatching it. I'm just like, damn, this thing still holds up.
It
Like
holds up.
it
It's
still
true.
holds
Yeah,
up.
it's like it makes sense that we're not all always trying to watch a Nazi movie, but if you're
Yeah,
in the mood, you need to get a little history in your veins. Even though this is a revisionist history, it's
history.
still so good.
It's
So
again
so
what we
good.
wish would have happened. I love that he provides that some like wish
We
fulfillment
need
for
that.
people. Yeah.
Right. We need that. We need that.
So
All right. That about wraps it up for us. Let's remind the people where they can find us.
get your fix and follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and on Twitch at The Buffs. Follow me on all the socials at Misfit_Minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
Take us for a ride and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And please leave a positive review. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. And you can follow me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
That does it for us. We've covered some great movies this year. Thanks again, always, for listening, and the Movie Bus will be back in 2025. Until then.
Au revoir, Shoshana!